Rappolt. I'm the editor-in-chief of Art Review and the founder of its sister publication, Art Review Asia, and also of the Chinese edition that launched 2 years ago. The first time I came, I think seeing a work by Lim Manook, possibly 2014, I think, when she had these containers dropped outside the biennial in the public square. And I think being really struck by how much the Gwangju Biennale, more than any other, I think, is about not just art history, but kind of real lived history and how the two things come together within it. And then there's a dialogue that I think is completely unique because of the foundation of the biennial and why it was founded, in terms of that dialogue with real life, that I think has always struck me through every iteration as something that's provides an interesting context for art and the way it can develop. I think it's an interesting city because, like I said, there's this sort of historical, I think it'd be wrong to maybe baggage in a way, this history you can't escape somehow that's there, but also a city that wants to move forward and move on. And I think this dynamic is very present and very palpable when you're in the city. That's a really big question. I think it should focus on things that haven't yet been discussed or haven't yet been noticed. I mean, I think the lifeline for these types of events is partly about surprise and novelty and pushing things in new directions. There's also the question of how you overcome that. Would it be possible to do a biennial that completely ignored the history of Gwangju and the history of the region and the history of Korea to some extent? But that's also not to say that biennials need to go on forever either. There can be a point in the future sometime where you think, okay, this has served its purpose, we need to completely reinvent the whole thing. Because I think with Gwangju, you can also see how it might be trapped under the weight of its own history, that you have to keep coming back to this moment all the time, that's further and further in the past. And I think that's always the problem with commemorative biennials. The risk that this starts to happen. Also because when you have international curators coming in, the first thing they know about Gwangju is its history. And the first thing they know about the biennial is that it was founded in relation to this history or to commemorate this history. And therefore, you have to start revisiting that history again and again. Speaking to people who live there, this isn't always a good thing. You know, society also moves forward as well as looking back. And I think the challenge is very much how the biennial keeps up with a society that's moving forward, whilst kind of still preserving its integrity as something founded on historical events. One quick answer is that it depends on who's running it and how successful the biennial is. It's one of the premier international biennials, and particularly Asian biennials. Historically, Asian artists have not always had so many opportunities to show internationally, and Gwangju has been super important in providing that. But I think also in providing a window into Korea's art history as well. And I think this interface with different geographies that aren't always exposed around the rest of the world is one of the most important things about it. I should say at first, I don't think artists should be made to explain their works. If we had a biennial where no artist talked about their work at all, that would be completely fine. The nature of an artwork is it exists without its maker. But at the same time, in terms of reaching broader audiences, it is very helpful to have a story that's not so much, poof, this work came out from nowhere and suddenly it was there, but also how this work evolved, what kind of thinking process came into it, how personal or not it is. There's a level of intimacy that an artist talk brings to the work that doesn't exist without that. For people who maybe not so interested in art or struggle to find a way in, and for every biennial there are these people that are harder to reach, I think artist talks form a particularly important bridge to what's going on. And I think as someone who's done some, I learn as much as anyone else from the talks, and they're enormously entertaining and revealing, I think, to be a part of them, particularly when you don't know the people you're speaking to. And I think it really provides an extra level of depth. But like I said, not one that's completely necessary. Actually, how much synergy there was between the artists in the talk, despite the fact that they came from, you know, Taiki's from Thailand, Nais is also Pakistani, based in London. But despite the sort of apparent geographical differences, there was so much synergy between the works. And I think that was surprising and super interesting.